Hi, and welcome to the WellnessFX baseline panel video where we talk specifically about enzymes. Now, many times people have heard about liver enzymes, for example, and I have intentionally not included these particular enzymes in the videos associated with liver for a specific reason. Because to call them liver enzymes is to actually have kind of an oversight about them. It's not entirely accurate. And so I wanted to have a discussion about enzymes entirely separately so you have a real understanding of what these really are in the first place. So first of all, what is an enzyme? Enzymes are considered to be protein catalysts. Protein meaning that that's what they're made of, and a catalyst meaning that they make a reaction happen. Now, proteins, understand, are really just a series of amino acids, and amino acids have a slightly different structure, and so if you put different amino acids together in a long polypeptide chain, because of different types of bonds, it will fold in different ways. And if you've heard the phrase that structure dictates function, different amino acids have a different structure, therefore different amino acids in a series will make different proteins that have different structures, and those different structures mean they have different functions. Some proteins are involved with transportation and binding of certain things. Other ones are involved as enzymes, as catalysts, as things that make reactions take place. This is a real broad overview of really how a protein or an enzyme takes place, or what it does. Enzymes have the capability they all have what's called an active site, having the capability of taking two completely separate compounds and essentially making it into a brand new single compound. The reverse could be true as well, that this particular enzyme can take a compound and actually split it into two. So that's a real broad overview of what enzymes are actually doing. But understand that for every reaction that's taking place in the body, whether it's utilizing glucose and making ATP or creating fatty acids or doing the brain to fire, enzymes are involved. Enzymes are just absolutely critically functional in terms of proper body function. Enzymes, however, there's two things that we need to talk about. Enzymes, some of them, have what is called a cofactor or coenzyme, meaning that in this particular spot right here, around the active site, if this enzyme lacks its coenzyme or cofactor, that enzyme doesn't work. Now, coenzymes are considered to be non-protein compounds that are of organic in nature, usually vitamins. So many of the B vitamins act as coenzymes. A cofactor is a non-protein inorganic compound, usually a metal like zinc or selenium, for example, are very common cofactors for an enzyme. So again, what a cofactor or coenzyme is something that allows an enzyme to work properly. Without the cofactor or coenzyme, the enzyme cannot and will not work. A cofactor is usually something like a metal, like iron, like selenium, for example, magnesium. A coenzyme is usually something of organic material, like a vitamin. Again, very often many B vitamins act as coenzymes. Now, this is important to understand when we talk about some of the markers, some of the enzymes found on the WellnessFX baseline panel. The last thing to make note of, however, is most enzymes are found inside of cells. Okay? And we're going to be talking about three specific enzymes on a blood chemistry panel and talking about if it's high or if it's low, what that may mean. Now, the way that enzymes are typically viewed in conventional medicine is because most enzymes are found inside cells, that if a given enzyme is found too high on a blood chemistry, it's because these cells are actually breaking down, and therefore it's allowing this intracellular enzyme out into the blood to be picked up by a blood chemistry test. So if enzymes found on a blood chemistry are elevated, what it generally refers to is some kind of tissue damage, inflammation, or tissue breakdown. Now, the type of tissue becomes more specific because some enzymes are found more in one cell than a different type of cell, which we'll talk about in just a second. But understand two major concepts here. That enzymes, one, some enzymes need cofactors or coenzymes in order for them to function properly. If those are not present, the cofactors or coenzymes, the enzyme doesn't function properly, and may even be that the body doesn't produce enough of that enzyme even in the first place because the coenzyme or cofactor is not even present. On the other hand, Enzymes are found inside cells, and if cells are excessively breaking down, our cells are always breaking down to some degree, so it's normal to see a certain level of enzymes in our bloodstream. However, if that breakdown is excessive, if there's too much of it going on, then you find an excessive amount of those particular enzymes associated with that tissue in the blood, and you can identify where the breakdown is actually taking place. So now let's take a look at some of the specific enzymes found on the WellnessFX baseline panel. So now let's talk about the 3 particular enzymes that are found on the WellnessFX baseline panel. They are aspartate aminotransferase, alanine aminotransferase, and alkaline phosphatase. Now, very often, due to the length of the names, aspartate aminotransferase is often abbreviated as AST, alanine aminotransferase is ALT, and alkaline phosphatase is okay. Sometimes people just refer to it as ALK-PHOS. Now, these are the 3 enzymes that are found on the WellnessFX baseline panel. As we discussed before, the enzymes are typically found within cells of given tissues. If any of these enzymes are found excessively high on a blood chemistry, what that indicates is that there's some kind of cellular tissue damage that's taking place, and these intracellular enzymes are spilling out into the blood to be picked up by a blood chemistry test. Now, what tissues are broken down? That's where this becomes helpful. Because if you notice, aspartate aminotransferase, or AST, is found in a variety of tissues, from the heart, liver, muscle, lung, kidney, brain, intestines, red blood cells. And it has fairly high metabolic activity in some of those tissues. On the other hand, alanine aminotransferase, it's found a little bit in the heart and liver, but it's not as metabolically active as it is in the liver. This is mostly a liver enzyme. So as you can see, just looking at these 2 things, if somebody had issues with their liver was excessively breaking down for some reason, that there's a good chance that both of these, AST and ALT, would be high. But let's say it was in somebody's muscle. If somebody had excessive muscle tissue breakdown, the AST would be spilling out into the blood, but the ALT, because it's not really found in considerable amounts in muscle tissue, might be normal or maybe barely elevated. So you can see that knowing where these enzymes are more metabolically active in particularly what tissues can help you identify where the tissue that's excessively being broken down is. And it's pretty as simple as that. If the AST is high but the ALT is normal and the person does excessive amounts of exercise, there's a good chance that the exercise-induced muscle breakdown will produce elevated levels of AST. Now, something to remember is these particular enzymes only have a half-life, meaning they only exist for anywhere in the neighborhood of between about 17 to 47 days, which is a fairly large window. But what this means is, if these are elevated, it's an acute situation. It's happened probably sometime in the last month. That sometimes these will be elevated and a patient might say, oh, well, last summer, I went and vacationed a lot, I had bad food, and I drank a lot. Well, that's not going to cause it to be still elevated a year later. So this is, if you see these high, there's some kind of acute process that's actually taking place. After that, they tend to calm down and clear out. I will also say, too, that there are some studies indicating that something like ALT, if a repeat test is done a couple of weeks later, has returned back down to normal levels in about 1/3 to 1/2 of the times that was done. So these really can move around, and just because they're high does not necessarily mean that something is actively being broken down, and really a repeat test, perhaps, depending on how high these are, with a licensed medical doctor may be warranted. Now, I say that because if these AST and ALT specifically are, let's say, over 300, now that's some pretty serious breakdown, likely of the liver if ALT is also involved, and maybe something like hepatitis, in which case somebody really needs to be under the care of a licensed medical physician or professional. On the other hand, they may be elevated to, let's say, 100. Now, that's a little bit high, but that might be an indication of something called fatty liver. Now, fatty liver occurs in individuals, either alcoholic, and there's also non-alcoholic fatty liver, in the presence of excess fructose consumption or glucose consumption. Diabetics very often have some degree of fatty liver. That fatty liver basically clogs up the liver's ability to work properly, and some of these cells, the hepatocytes that have these enzymes in it, spill and break out and allow these to come out into the blood to be picked up. So depending on how high the markers are, like I said, if it's over 200, 300, sometimes it can even get up into the upper hundreds, then that's a pretty significant issue, and that person really should be under the consult of a licensed medical professional. On the other hand, if they're 50, 60, 70, 100, maybe even as high as like 150, 200, what you're probably looking at, and there's a variety of things that it could be, might be something like fatty liver. But again, you'd have to look at things like hemoglobin A1C to see if the person had blood sugar dysregulation, find out what their alcohol intake is like, because that can impact this as well. Speaking of alcohol, according to research, there is a ratio that if the AST to ALT ratio is 2 to 1, then that can be an indication of excess alcohol consumption. What I mean by this is, if the AST is high and the ALT is normal, it suggests that it's probably in a tissue other than the liver, because if it were the liver, then the liver might be elevated as well. A rare case exists where if they're both somewhat elevated, but the AST to ALT ratio is 2 to 1, then that can indicate alcohol consumption. Reason being is if you remember the half-life of the AST and ALT, it's relatively short, within about a month or so. There's a certain isoform of AST that is produced in the presence of alcohol consumption, and it has a lifespan of about 87 days, so almost twice to 3 times as long. Therefore, if somebody does drink excessive amounts of alcohol, alcoholic tendencies, the AST, because it has a longer time that it hangs out in the body, a specific isoform of it with alcohol ingestion, will tend to be in this higher ratio as the ALT may clear out. Now, the one we didn't talk about yet is alkaline phosphatase. Now, alkaline phosphatase is a little bit different. It is found in the liver, more specifically in what could be referred to as the biliary tree, as well as bone. It has some metabolic activity in the placenta if a woman's pregnant, as well as some metabolic activity in the intestines as well. So a real possibility exists that AST, ALT, and alkaline phosphatase are all elevated. That pretty much points to this person's liver. If AST is elevated and alanine or AST and alkaline phosphatase is normal, chances are it's probably not the liver and probably somewhere else. If alkaline phosphatase is elevated by itself, it may be the liver, although you could expect to see these possibly elevated as well, but it may be in the bone, for example. Children tend to have really high levels of alkaline phosphatase because their bones are growing. Also, if somebody recently had a fracture and that fracture is still healing in their bone, then they can have elevated alkaline phosphatase because those bone cells contain alkaline phosphatase, and if they are to rupture, you'd see higher levels of alkaline phosphatase. One other quick note about the liver is in the liver, one of the roles of the liver is it actually produces bile. And we can quickly draw this out. So let's say you have your liver, and one of its roles is to make bile. Now, bile is released out of the liver towards the small intestines in order to help emulsification of fats. So that will head off to the small intestine. And there's another little duct here that goes to the gallbladder. And this here could be referred to as the biliary tree. And the reason why is because it's really a network of these ducts that all contain bile in it, and therefore could be referred to as the biliary tree. Now, there's some suggestion that alkaline phosphatase is involved with the liver, but it actually has more to do with the biliary tree than it does the liver itself. So it is possible to see high alkaline phosphatase, not have it actually be specific liver damage itself, but rather have it be just slightly below the liver with this biliary system. And one of the things that you might want to look at is the marker bilirubin, which is discussed on another video. So that's if these are all high. Now, if you remember, when we talked about coenzymes and cofactors, that all of these enzymes have cofactors, or specifically, I should say, in this case, it's coenzymes and cofactors. Now, this is where nutritional medicine and looking at blood chemistries can become really, really helpful. The coenzyme responsible for AST and ALT is vitamin B6. What this means is, as its coenzyme, If this coenzyme is not present, then these enzymes don't work properly. And there's some evidence, according to research, that a B6 deficiency can actually cause a decrease in production of these enzymes in the first place. So, if AST and or ALT are high, you're looking at tissue damage. Where is the tissue damage? It really depends on which one's high to help identify that. If, however, they're low, that can be an indication of vitamin B6 deficiency and is a great marker at catching this. Now, there's more specific vitamin B6 deficiency tests that have to do with the activity of these enzymes, but just on a standard blood chemistry, if either of these are low, that may be something that you're looking at. Alkaline phosphatase, on the other hand, has a few things that may be present if it is in fact low. One is zinc. Alkaline phosphatase is considered to be a zinc-dependent enzyme. So again, if alkaline phosphatase is a little bit low on a blood chemistry, there's no tissue damage, it may be that you're looking at a zinc deficiency. Another one is vitamin C. That scurvy, which is a overt deficiency of vitamin C, often shows low alkaline phosphatase enzyme levels. So if it's a little bit low and the person doesn't have scurvy, what you may be looking at is a subclinical vitamin C deficiency, either zinc or vitamin C. Another thing that can cause low alkaline phosphatase is something called hypothyroidism, which in terms of the art of looking at a blood chemistry, if somebody has low alkaline phosphatase, it may be a zinc deficiency, vitamin C deficiency, or it might be hypothyroidism. If you look at the TSH and the TSH is high or the person's on thyroid medication, then that's probably why their alkaline phosphatase is low. In terms of how to find zinc deficiency, vitamin C deficiency is kind of tough. But one thing you may ask if you see somebody that has low alkaline phosphatase is when they brush their teeth, if their gums bleed. That vitamin C is associated with collagen formation, and you get something called capillary fragility, meaning that capillaries that carry blood to tissues in your body, that they lack that integrity to keep them together. They may rupture more easily, and therefore one way that you can see a vitamin C deficiency is when somebody brushes their teeth if their gums bleed. Now obviously it can be other things like periodontal disease, but that's something that you can certainly ask. In terms of zinc deficiency, it's kind of hard to pick up as well, but a really classic one when it comes to zinc deficiency is a decreased ability to taste. And that's something that you could ask, do you have a less ability to taste your foods than you did, say, 5 or 10 years ago? If they say yes, which is something that many elderly do say, and there's a strong implication that perhaps many elderly, as they age, their body doesn't work as well, they don't absorb things as well, they don't eat as much food, so they're not getting as many nutrients in, that maybe many of them are zinc deficient in the first place. So these are a couple different things and a couple questions that you can ask if alkaline phosphatase is low. So this is the video on enzymes. I hope you found this helpful, and I will see you in another video. Thanks.